it's difficult for people who worked hard for their money to get into certain political positions. First, the amount you must have, the forms and everything. What do we say about these structures that are deliberately built locally to restrict those who don't have corruption money to get into power? You define to us more than ever what it means to have Christians, those who carry these values of the kingdom, at the helm of affairs. And it's so inspiring, all the things that you've done over the years. And I just want to say thank you for a start.
You're very kind.
And
thank you. Thank you.
So honored to have you here. Do you think that Africans generally, we Africans now have the youngest population all over the world, and it's projected that in the next couple of years, 1 out of every 5 person you see is going to be an African or a black person. Now there is hunger in the continent that's touching the quality of leadership. But also, if we come down to the area of faith, we look at the fact that religion as it is, whether Christianity or Islam, has not been such that has really helped us in terms of national transformation. It seems to have been used to condition people in a certain way. And do you think Africans are expressing anger in the right way towards bad leadership that we have seen on the continent?
So what you were saying about the continent's demographics is quite true. In fact, what you should know is that it is not just about Africa becoming 2.5 billion people by 2050. It is the fact that by 2050, 85% of increases in global workforce will be African.
Yes.
Now that is so staggeringly, statistically significant that it just completely changes everything about global productivity. From 85% of increases in global workforce to come from one continent, that's a demographic pivot of unknown precedents.
If I be permitted to interject that, there are also structures set in place to make sure that the workforce in Africa is reduced to cheap labor.
Oh no, let's not.
Maybe internationally.
Let's not get there quite quickly because there are, structures.
Will we as a continent have our labor force structures?
Okay, so let's come to that when I have finished my thoughts on the first question you raised. Yes. When you look at the demographics, because I want to go beyond the broad population to get to your question about whether we're angry enough. Yeah. The population, average age population across the world is also very interesting. So in Europe, it's 44 years average age population.
Yes. In
China and also America, it's 39.8, 39.2.
Yes.
In Latin America, it's 33 to 34 years. In the Middle East is 35 years. In some subset of the Middle East and in some other subset, you have something close enough to India, and the Indian one is 29 years average age population.
Yes.
Now Africa's average age population is 18.9, so it's a vastly young continent.
Yes.
For every one young person in Europe, there are 50 old people.
Yes.
The reverse is the case in Africa. For every one old person, there are 50 young people. So that kind of a population structure already defines many things. So when it comes to the matter of anger and how it is expressed, you would connect it to what people are angry about. So the older generation that would be represented by that one person compared to the 50 young people, the older generation have been raised in a certain kind of way. They have been through some of the ones that are still in the what we call the silent generation before. That's the ones in their 80s and above. And then the ones that are called the baby boomers. So people like me are early set of the baby boomers. In that generation went through, they saw the silent generation, they saw slave trade, they saw colonialism, they saw militarization and all of that. My generation saw only a bit of, I'm not even sure my generation, but the early ones in my generation. I, for example, didn't see colonialism. I was born 63. We already had independence. 63 was the republic, you know. It matters because what then happened with that generation is that it essentially was the generation handed independent society, right?
Yes.
Politically independent society, which needed to then be transformed in the way that, say, Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew was handed Singapore, and then it needed to be transformed.
Yes.
So the failure to achieve that transformation is now the inheritance of these 50 out of, in a ratio to 1.
Yes.
Right? So the 50 that have now been handed a continent that could have been transformed economically, but has not been transformed, is trying to figure out what they make of their inheritance. So they, however, are also products of a generation that has not quite operated with the tenets of accountability. And so that lack of acceptance of the culture of accountability in a modern state structure. In the African system, there was accountability. But in a modern state structure, we lost those systems of accountability. And so that has meant that they've raised children in ways that don't support accountability. And because they have raised children that way, the younger generation are still, they're vexed, they're angry, but they don't fully quite have the environment in which to express the anger properly and constructively. And then the ones who want to express the anger are not supported by the rest, because the rest have been raised to be cowardly about demanding accountability. And so their parents say to them, don't worry, everything will be fine. But everything won't be fine until something is done about everything. So for the ones who even try to break out of that mode and express anger, understanding how to actually clarify what you're angry about. Understand it. So a young person today would not quickly be analytical about why the situation they find themselves in is in the way it is. They need to be. You can't say, I'm angry. what are you angry about? I'm just angry. No, you can't just be angry. You can connect your anger to many things. It should be any African child who's not had the opportunity to go to a school that gave them a firm foundational skills in literacy, numeracy, and critical thinking, socio-emotional skills, should be angry. Why? Because the absence of those strong foundational skills will follow them through life. It will follow them. It doesn't matter what, you can promote them into middle school, they go to university or whatever, it's still there.
Follow them.
The foundation, the foundational gap is still there. And so they will not, the research says it, their earning gap will still be wide compared to those who got strong foundational skills.
Yes.
So just getting the younger ones to be interested in those kinds of analytical data, being able to connect data to their situation. I am struggling because there was a lack of that foundation that to enable me to be the kind of person who, by the time I have done university, I have the kinds of skills that a university education should have given me. And so I can compare with my contemporaries in the world because of those skills. Or the person says, I have those skills, but the structure of the economy has not expanded sufficiently for me to get a job. And even when people say, create something, there are many barriers that stand against me, inhibiting anything that I'm trying to create. So you have to be very good in articulating it. And the reason that you have to be good at articulating why you're angry is because you then know who you're going to face. Right? To demand accountability for.
Do you feel people are facing the wrong persons?
I think that sometimes they actually are looking for the soft targets to take on. So for example, people can be angry, and what they should be doing is going to the local government chairman and saying, where's the budget? Where's the budget for the local government? Why are the things that a local government should do not being done? But they could leave the local government chairperson and his colleagues and just look for the man who is running a little business in the community, and they go after him and say, hey, you've been doing this thing, you've been selling here for many years, what have you done for us? Excuse me, one man is trying to do business in the community. You live in the local government chairman who is spending money that belongs to the public. You don't think that you can face them, so you look for a soft target. So it's always that there's this underlying cowardice that is inhibiting the effectiveness of the anger. And so more and more I say to the younger generation of Africans, we have to be more analytical. If you come to the School of Politics, Policy and Governance, SPPG, that I am using to train a new generation of Africans that will lead our public spheres, the first thing you learn is that in God we trust. Every other person, everyone else must bring data.
Everyone else must bring data.
Tell me you're angry, give me data.
Give me data.
That backs your anger. Because that data is going to ultimately be your pathway to knowing how to solve.
I mean, on that subject of anger, I mean, it's a difficult mix. How we have been able to mix anger and cowardice. Now, you for instance,
you can be angry and be a coward.
Yes, it's a very funny mix.
How would you see people who are angry and it's the wall they go and hit?
True.
What did the wall do to them?
True. It's an incredible mix because like we know in Nigeria, we don't have history of our parents who fought for independence compared to Kenya, where we had the Mau Mau who stood against the British and won. So we don't have a culture of seeing what it means to stand up to power. And then, so it is forming in the young people now that because of that gap, there is now the culture of trying to kick at the low-hanging fruit.
It's the same thing. We're literally saying the same thing. As I was saying to you, before the program started, it's you ultimately would trace patterns of social norms and the inheritance of those norms to the beginning of time of any society.
Yes.
Yeah. So were we born to be cowards? No, I don't think we were born to be cowards. I think that what has happened over time is a delineation between what I call the actually it's not even my intellectual property. It belongs to somebody called Peter, trying to remember Peter's last name now. He's a professor, Nigerian, talked about the public and private, society in the sense of the public being when it concerns the common good.
Yes.
And then the private being, when it concerns the immediate community. So, for example, you would find that people are quicker to ensuring that the money that they contribute to the town union is not stolen. But if somebody steals the money at the local government, it doesn't mean anything to them.
Yes.
Okay? So that bifurcation can be part of why you find people, when it has to do with all of us are being affected by this situation. We all need to come together and fight against it. Everyone is thinking, what if 5 people have to die in the process of fighting for all of us? I don't want to be one of those 5 people. That's the thinking. So that mindset will make it not possible to easily mobilize to defend the public good. It's a mindset that just does not enable collective action.
Yes.
And you need that kind of collective action in order to create a new norm in society.
Yes.
So when you compare what's going on with the Kenyans, for a long time also, the young, the generation of the Kenyans didn't immediately start fighting. It got to the point where they realized that this is beginning to look exactly like what the colonials did to us, except that in this case, you have domestic colonialists, because all of the people ruining governance in Africa as Africans, and they are worse than what you could even imagine, because they are doing it to their own.
Yes,
they are doing it to their own. The idea of the colonialists conquering Africa, taking over Africa. This is an external incursion. But when people who are flesh and blood of you are saying that they somehow deserve a better life than the rest of you, that is reprehensible.
Yes.
And that is something that should make everybody say, no, you can't do this.
Yes.
But because of this feeling of the artificial state, in other words, people look at a state and they say, I can see myself in it. They can't see themselves in it. So when you tell them, let's fight for the state, they say, why? If anybody would die fighting, it shouldn't be me. they look at the way that they have always destroyed the possibility of collective action. You see all those mothers and even fathers in the market square, in the market space of Nigeria or of Benin Republic, of Ghana. When they are in that market space, do you ever hear them fighting over religion, over ethnic group or whatever else? You don't hear them. They are there for a mission. They're in the market space. They learn how to cooperate. They learn how to collaborate. They learn how to compete. But they are guided by the idea that we just need to live peacefully in order to get our business going, right? Now, once the political people get into the relationship, it changes. Hasn't that always? So because of that, the state is not enabling collaboration, cooperation, and healthy competition. What it is doing is it is dividing that up, and even saying the state is perhaps not completely right. I should simply say the political class, the politicians, they are preying on those primordial tendencies for their own gain. And because they are doing that, when you say to people, let us come and fight, they already have been told, why are you going to fight your own brother? Why are you going to fight your own sister?
It's from your tribe.
Come on. This fellow is making it impossible for your children to have the prospects of a good life. Even if you don't like yourself, how about your generation coming after you? I mean, you want a society that works. That's what you're looking for. So that this idea of an Africa where the younger generation are so much more beginning to see that they can be as good as the rest of the world. So when you see what technology has been able to do, it's leveling the playing field for those who at least have some minimal set of skills to engage technology. And what that is doing is that it is helping more of the young people to either completely disconnect from the local. So they've already migrated to the global. And the standards of the global are enabling them. Giving them economic opportunity. So they say, I'm doing well. Forget these people. So they can be located here, but they are connected with the rest of the world. And so they say, forget the rest. But the thing though is, it would be a big mistake for this generation to think in the way that our generation and the ones before us thought, which is just do well. Once you do well, then the country is doing well. No. Look, you judge whether a country, a people are doing well by the number of them that are doing well.
By the number of them.
By the number of them that are doing well. The fact that we have some 20% of Africans who are living the quality of life of contemporaries in any other of the countries of the world does not mean when Africa is doing well. Because we have shiny lights in, that's when we have the lights, But because we have, nice looking estates like the one where we're speaking from today, does not mean that That's the story. So a continent that's estimated to be the one that would have more than 80% of the remaining poor people in the world by 2030. 80% cannot simply be celebrating that a few of our children are stars.
And that leads me.
We need all
ahead.
children to be stars.
And that leads me to the next question. Do you think that the suffering of Africa is deliberately architected to be so by the Western world?
You know, I like when people ask this question, because it gives me the opportunity to say you don't know what is doing you. You know, you see, because there is that. Anybody who says that that it doesn't exist, I mean, I'm frequently fighting that. You know, I'm one of the loudest Africans, globally speaking, about the collapse of the existing multilateral order, and how it is necessary that we should design a new multilateral order that is inclusive and that is very mindful of the structural imbalances that happened just by virtue of the history of how the nation states have been formed around the world, especially on our continent, right? So I am the what do you call it? I'm waving the card that all the existing multilateral system, institutions are not fit for purpose, because there have been radical changes in the world. For example, I was just sharing demographic data with you. You have to be mindful of that. You know, the UN is basically rendered redundant these days simply because you have the great power competition between China and the US, and you know, and yet we have so many global issues that need to be solved, whether it's you know, issues of terrorism, of climate change, cybersecurity issues, the AI. What are we going to do in terms of its governance, dealing with inequality, very wide inequality, deep inequality, acute inequalities. So these are real issues that need to be solved, and in the normal framework that we currently have, they're not longer being solved. So you need a new multilateral. So the architecture that you refer to is indeed problematic, and it's created certain levels of barriers for Africa. For example, when you look at the WTO, the World Trade Organization, there was a time that it served a purpose for the ones that created, that were the architects of it. So the conversation then was so much about free trade. Today, the same free trade is undermined by some of the policies that the same countries that trumpeted free trade to Africa and gave us lectures on free trade are pursuing for their own interests. So it's it's a world that has really empowered the strong much more than it has cared about what happens with the weaker systems, with the weaker countries. However, that's not the full story. You see, Africa would be in a stronger position to face up to the rest of the world, were we running ourselves well. Our greatest vulnerability is the poor governance of our own continent. Our continent has not run itself well. So we're in a situation now where you look at illicit flows that leave the continent to go to illicit flows, as in, you know, corruption money, or, you know, corruption proceeds and all kinds of things that flow out from the continent in their trillions. Now, it is unbelievable that that would happen to a continent that needs exactly such flows to invest in its development, in building its human capital, in building its critical infrastructure, from power to technology backbones to water systems, to roads and to rails and ports. The infrastructure that leads to growth, and all of the investments that we need in order to build the systems. You can't get to development until you have those systems in place. We need all the money, but that money gets pillaged and lands in the countries that don't need it. Okay, so who did that? Our people did that. Okay, our people did that. And which is something that we do frequently because of my background as a co-founder of Transparency International. We're talking about the fact that those countries have a duty to not allow money that's been fretted out of Africa to land in their countries and they sit on them. So they have a duty, a global duty, as we have been saying. Then you think of the fact that all of this is coming from, leadership that is not strategic, that is not thinking of tomorrow.
Yes.
So where are those flows mostly coming from? 2/3 of African countries have one form of minerals or the other.
Yes.
2/3. Now, you look at minerals and you behave as if it's going to be there forever. Of course not. Gabon. So human capital is so important. But my point back again to the AI world that we're already in. In fact, we've long been in it.
Yes.
Is to say every child that goes to school, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, by the time they are the age of 10, they must have those critical skills of literacy, numeracy, socio-emotional.
Yes. Yes.
So that with those foundational skills, they can navigate the world. That's what research is showing us. And today, it's not so. 9 out of every 10 don't have it.
Wow. That's huge.
That's a disaster.
That's huge.
In an AI world,
that's huge.
9 out of every 10 African children that you see, they go to school, but they are not learning. Schooling is not learning.
Schooling is not learning.
What?
True.
Wow. Schooling is not learning. And the way to solve it, where we know, structured pedagogy. The method of teaching matters. It's not just about the quality of the teacher, but the method of teaching. Teaching at the right level. Making sure that every child has access to the kind of textbook that they need. Some of the children doing multilingual teaching. We know evidence of what works. That's why, when I saw the data in 2019, 2020, I saw that data of the study on foundational learning. I was like, what? Not that it didn't exist when I was Minister of Education. I saw that children were not really, the level of learning. We're losing more children to being promoted from one class to the other without having that strong foundation. Yes. So part of what we had a textbook policy that would address it, so that access to textbook, instructional, and then instructional materials for the teachers. So the kind of training, one of the things that we launched when I was Minister of Education was focused on the teachers. So we had, I think we had STEP, we also had the program that was addressing in-service training for teachers so that you could just improve their method of teaching.
Yeah.
We had the teacher upgrade program.
Yes.
STUP. Where what were we doing with this? I met a Ministry of Education, where an education sector where 20-something years before I got there, we had outlawed teacher grade 2 certificate being all that teachers had in order to teach in primary and secondary school. Because people were holding teacher grade 2 certificate that they acquired
Wow.
and were in the classroom teaching. And there had not been any kind of upgrade of that.
Wow.
And so when I saw that, we still had a significant number of the teachers, so we designed that program, and it was basically an upgrade program. So all the colleges of education in the country, all the departments of education, the faculties of education in the country, the National Teacher Institute in Kaduna designed an upgrade program to take people to NCE level. Okay?
NC?
Yes, that is National Certificates for Education. That became the minimum qualification for you to be in the classroom.
That was done when you were...
When I was, there. Most of my reforms in education, I wasn't one of those that were trying to build all kinds of classrooms that were not going to be of any use, except opportunity for corruption. A lot of those people telling you we built classrooms, so it was a corruption conduit.
That was a big one.
It was a corruption. The things that improve learning for children is not the classroom that you're building.
Are there things now you wish you had done then that you didn't do then?
No. And I mean it. The only thing that I wish had happened was that Nigerians would have been strong enough to say you don't unravel reforms.
True.
I am one for taking accountability. But if every time that people read through the reforms in education, for the older generation that followed the reforms, every time they see me, they actually hold me, they cry on my shoulder and say, "Kai, what a miss."
Yes.
So I don't, because it was incisive.
Yes.
When I was Minister of Minerals, because I'm a policy, I live for policy.
Yes.
So I enjoy policy issues, because policies are really looking at the problem and analytically figuring out how to solve
fix it.
Yes. So in the minerals sector, the process of identifying what we needed to do to transform the sector to the level of the country I benchmarked our reform to. At that time, it was Chile. Chile had taken its copper industry as a mining sector, as a mining country, and done some important reforms. And then I also then had to read every piece of relevant literature on mining jurisdictions and what are the critical success factors for those ones that succeeded. And by doing that and using all the indicators of success and measures that were taken, and then putting it side by side, the ministry, the sector that I had inherited as a minister, I could see clearly what reforms we needed to do. And the number of reforms we needed to do for me at the Ministry of Minerals were 107 reforms, tasks.
107?
Yes. And the president had said to me, I need you to reform the sector in 6 months. Of course, I didn't let him get away with it. I said, all these your ministers before you asked me to go to solid minerals. How many months did you give them to reform theirs? I had to fight back, right? So, but he said, I know you will. I know you will.
That's President Obasanjo.
Yes. So I went to that sector, and 107 tasks, including the act that underpins the sector.
Yes.
That was my work with my team. The new Minerals Act, because we needed to have a Minerals Act that was not destroying the sector.
Yes.
The Minerals Act that I inherited, had minister shall. In a sector that is a private sector-led sector in the other parts of the world. So you give the minister all the powers. That's not a sector that is what do you call it? That is ready. It's a sector that is concentrated power, and that discretionary power is a turnoff for global capital. So we had to work on a new legislation that understood the context of global capital and how decision making concerning that sector needed to be based on the rule of law. So we changed that legislation. That's why in that legislation, you would only find minister's authority in just a few sections.
Does that not give him for exploitation of foreign powers?
Because, for example,
yes,
the idea that I would sit in the office and all of you would come and line up in my office, waiting to have a meeting with me so I will give you license. What is that? That is such a hopelessly annoying theater. So I was like, no, sorry. That's not what my contemporary in other parts of the world are doing with their time.
With their time. Yeah.
I'm supposed to be thinking strategy. I'm supposed to be envisioning the sector.
True.
Thinking strategy.
Yeah.
Articulating policy. And I'm going to sit and be haggling license with you people. No. So what do? We designed what is known as a mining cadastral system.
Wow.
You don't have to come anywhere near my office. There is a technology that enables you go. You go. First of all, we had to do airborne geophysical survey.
Yes.
Before I became minister, before the administration of President Obasanjo, the last airborne survey, and it was very limited, was done by the British.
Wow.
So we didn't know where we had occurrences of minerals. So when I was minister, we did an airborne geophysical, comprehensive airborne geophysical survey. And the Geological Survey Agency used to be a department of the ministry. Now, it's not global practice, so we had to give it its autonomy.
Wow.
We did the legislation that enabled what you call today NGSA, Nigerian Geological Survey Agency. It was during my time. So the data from that airborne geophysical survey, you have to translate it. That data, when you go, you say, I'm interested in exploring the existence of, call any mineral. I will tell you the number that we eventually found. And then you go to the geological survey. They say to you, oh, well, this is the data disk that we have on it. You purchase your data disk. Then you go to what replaced that power of the minister, known as the Mining Cadastral Office. The Mining Cadastral Office is a system that you go to, you say, these are the coordinates of where this data is showing I would be able to find lithium.
Wow.
You enter the coordinates and it pops up information and says under exploration, meaning somebody has a hold on it to explore on it, and it tells you what date that hold will be over for them to reapply. Okay? Now, it could also say to you, it is available. So what do? You just register your interest and it records it to the level of the second in which you did. Now, when you've done that and your assistant comes and he's also interested and he enters exactly the same coordinate
Yes.
The system tells him it's already under consideration. No, consideration
now.
All right? And then ultimately, what you're required to do is to now put in place all the documentation that is required. You take it back into the system. The system tells you that you are recognized as one that has an exploration license. And it is called first come, first served.
Will it generate the license?
It's a technology thing. Wow. So basically what the mining cadastral office exists to do is to remove discretion. It cannot be, I like Femi, so let me give him license. No.
Wow.
Okay, so it brought that level of transparency to the
fairness also.
Sector. Fairness,
and this is how Nigeria can work.
This is I'm talking about legislation.
Wow.
All right. So but I diverted because we're talking education and I wanted to show you the difference. So in minerals, 107 tasks that included these legislations and building those kinds of agencies that are necessary to underpin.
Yes.
But you know what happened? I did the same thing. I benchmarked Nigeria against I used Singapore as our benchmark country for education.
Wow.
By the time I did the same kind of process that I did in solid minerals, we needed to do 436 reforms.
436 reforms?
Yes. 107, 436. Why?
What?
You have 3 levels of education. That is 3 phases of education.
Yes.
You are at 3 levels. You have multiple issues in education. You have multi-layered matters on governance of education. All of those things required changes.
Wow.
All right? So when you now take that kind of a sector and you have analytically outlined what these issues are, what these problems are, and you've started solving for them as a country, and suddenly a bunch of people come along and they say, Ezekwesili's ideas are...
And that's where the politics enter.
And who pays? The children of the poor.
True.
That's the saddest part. For me, people can do whatever they like, but it doubly hurts me when the impact of that action is on those that are poor and vulnerable.
Wow.
Because the pathway for social and economic mobility is that education. So I was saying to you that at that time in education, we already saw what was going on in the disconnect between schooling and learning. The public school system was failing the children of the poor.
True.
Because they were the ones that were in those weak public schools where quality of teacher as well as method of teaching, access to instructional materials, access to textbooks, being able to evaluate and monitor performance in order to measure the data and then learn from it didn't exist. And one of my reforms was precisely on that. So I had seen that there was a problem. We were solving that problem. So all that needed to happen was to continue to solve it, not to stop it and begin to look for opportunities to award contracts. I used to say to my team in education, are you now Ministry of Works? Why are you so interested in the things that concern contracts, purchasing and buying, when there are policy directions that make a difference, right? Now, imagine Nigeria, Kenya, Senegal, Burkina in the same pot doing that. That's how come. Whereas the rest of the world, the average is 6 out of every 10 children not achieving. Our own continent is 9 out of every 10 children.
That's huge. That's big.
India came out as 8 out of every 10 children.
Wow.
The Prime Minister was offended by it. Wow. You know what he did? He saw that data went to work.
Wow.
In the last 4-5 years, they have improved learning outcomes of their children by 20%.
By 20%.
What does it say to you? I'm back to the young generation. You don't see something that offends you and then you say, I'm angry, and then you walk away. It's like a man who looks at himself in the mirror, like the Bible says, right?
Yes.
No, he didn't walk away. He simply said, not under my watch. It will not happen. So, I was a guest of the Indian government, together with colleagues within the global system for improving this situation. And it was simple. A leader said, not under my watch will children go to school and not learn.
So for them now it's about 5 out of everything.
No, no. They've improved the learning outcome by 20%, meaning that children who were failing that, now 20% in terms of improvement in their learning outcomes. So over time, it would just be that the system enables a child that comes through it to be in grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. By the age of 10, they are ready with all the skills that are foundational for future learning. Wow. It's a predictor of lifelong skills. It is. Yeah. So we're joking. And in an AI world, this is it. So imagine an AI world where 9 out of all these are children don't have this minimum. So it's not even a case of they didn't go to university. It's that the minimum that they need to engage this new world, we didn't even give to them. No. So being angry is not enough.
It's not enough.
It's being effectively angry.
True. Strategically.
You have to be effectively angry.
It's been a long week for you. Particularly a long day today.
Yeah, but when you get me talking about development, because I kind of, look, I'm a retired person. I don't have to lift a finger to do anything.
Yes.
But when I look at the continent, so this issue of the foundational learning, I'm like, the world knows me to be carrying it on my head like there's no tomorrow. And there are countries that are ready because we know what works.
Yes.
Do you understand? You need the political will for people to say, these are the things that work, we will do it. I will use that, my leadership, to ensure that it is, when we do the budgeting for education, those things that work are the things we will be putting money to.
Wow. Not
building some ramshackle classrooms that they are not building it for the children. I am telling you, on good, I know. I did the public procurement reform in this country. I've advised countries on the continent on their public procurement issues. Most of the things you see where the politicians are happiest to do around construction, it's all about corruption. It has nothing to do with the provision of something that
for the people.
No, forget it. This is the creamy part of their lives.
Wow.
So frankly speaking, for me, your effective anger is to solve this problem of governance. If we don't solve it, we can, God has given us the faculty for the things that we must do. God is not going to be the one that will tell us to say, no, we shouldn't be governed by rubbish.
Looking at your work ethics at this age, I was on ground at your last.
You came for my 60th
birthday.
I'm not. Well, next on the 28th, I'll be 63 now.
My God.
So, but like Caleb, I can very much tell you that I feel like I'm 23.
Still feel young.
Yes, because it's in the mind.
Yes.
And for me, there's so much. The continent has no business failing. We have no business failing. We're not in another round where the minerals on our continent will power the technologies of today. So whether it's lithium, battery is going to be so important for everything. Rare earth minerals, these critical mineral assets. Now there's a race going on for it. And yet we're not ready with governance. If that's why I'm telling you guys that if you don't understand the power of good governance to take us out of the depth, what do you guys normally call the trenches, or what do you call that thing that your lingo?
Trenches,
yes. That's what if we don't understand the power of good governance, this is the greatest obstacle. When somebody tells you that this is your greatest obstacle, what do? You face that thing. You
face the obstacle.
You don't go and be looking for little. There's too much measuring in the minors. Too much of measuring in the minors. So you face that big obstacle, remove it, and it's saying because it is your biggest obstacle, it means that all the other obstacles can easily be worked on when you have taken that one out. So here we are. Africa is once again in this thing where China, America, Europe, they're all competing for who can get a hold of the pot of these critical minerals on the continent, right? Now, what governance system do you have different from the one that massively misused what Africa got from oil, copper, diamond, just name them? But what is different? The only thing that can be different is you being effectively angry and saying, we can't be governed by rubbish.
I believe everyone watching this right now I think there's mixed feelings going on. First is your life, like I said, it's like a light. It burns corruption. It eradicates it. And for me, I'm inspired by that. And your thought process, I don't even know how to describe it. I just want to thank you profoundly for coming today, despite your very busy schedule. And there are things you've said today that will go down in history, and as things that will serve as compass for us as we navigate. We do need your voice more than ever at this time. And this platform is to bridge that gap, to get it more closer to my generation. And it's so impressive hearing this from